Remember all the overheated January 6th rhetoric? It was a riot, it was a coup, it was domestic terrorism. Laughably, it was even called a siege, as if anybody involved missed even a single meal. Finally, the narrative masters settled on the slightly less preposterous insurrection. But on Wednesday, New Mexico man Matthew Martin was found not guilty of all 4 of the charges he was arrested on last year: entering and remaining in a restricted building, disorderly conduct, violent entry, and parading in the Capitol. But video evidence that Martin walked in through a door held open by police, committed no violence or vandalism, and left after 10 minutes disproved all the charges. Coincidentally, the verdict came just hours after NBC News reported that the Department of Injustice had, with the help of citizen informers, identified hundreds more January 6 protesters, and that all they needed to prosecute them was millions more taxpayer dollars to hire more lawyers. One of the loose network of sedition hunters, as they've branded themselves, in an interview with NBC News, may have inadvertently confirmed the growing suspicion that there were FBI plans trying to whip up hysteria in the crowd that day. "I still can't explain the order," one anonymous sleuth said, and he continued, quote, "They have arrested people on lesser charges, but there are others we've identified from the FBI list who committed more serious crimes and are still out there." How naive. Just today, the Department of Injustice's other political show trial reached a similar conclusion. I'm speaking of the Michigan misfits who were charged with hatching a plot to kidnap Democrat Governor Gretchen Whitmer. At trial, the defense showed that every step of the so-called conspiracy was suggested and planned by FBI agents and informants. In a word, entrapment. The jury acquitted 2 of the men outright and deadlocked on the other 2, resulting in a mistrial. Joining us now to discuss these DOJ show trials is Matt Braynard, director of Look Ahead America. Thanks for being here tonight, Matt.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And this particular J6 trial is near and dear to my heart because the gentleman and I share the same name. His name is Matthew Martin. I'm Matthew Martin Braynard. And it reminds us that any one of us participating in what we believe could have been a legal protest could have, like many of these people, ended up in prison for a year or longer without even the privilege of a court date. And the 4 charges that this gentleman was tried on are the same 4 charges that they're hitting everybody, the vast majority, hundreds of people, dragged from their houses in the middle of the night with guns pointed at them, guns pointed at their children and their family members. These same 4 charges are the ones that he beat. And what the Justice Department has been hoping to do with their thugs at the FBI is to intimidate people into taking a plea agreement to accepting a guilty plea on one of those charges, or, well, you go to court and we're going to sentence you to prison for years and years on 4 charges. So you better just plead guilty to the one. I'm glad that we had a hero like Matthew Martin that stood up and said, no, I'm taking this to trial. He got what I would consider to be a pretty fair judge who gave an honest verdict. And remember, there have been hundreds of people who've been so far prosecuted and pled guilty because they couldn't afford a lawyer. You know, there's a saying at the Justice Department is that you may be able to beat the charges, but you can't afford the ride. And these are people who are paying, $10, $20, $30, $40, $50,000 a month in legal fees. I spoke to one gentleman who lost his family's farm because of it. Others have lost jobs, lost marriages, lost relationships to fight these charges. And most of them are just pleading guilty. And, I guess they're, evidence of there really being an insurrection. All these people are pleading guilty. The truth is that if these people had the wherewithal, the financial resources, and the fortitude of Matthew Martin to persist and fight, they would be equally found not guilty. And looking at the situation in Michigan, it seems like the only way the FBI can possibly get a conviction is through entrapment. And that seems to be the same case for what happened on January 6th. And I hope that this inspires more people who are now awaiting trial to say, look, I can beat this. We can beat this. And I'm very disappointed in the right-wing legal profession in general in this country, all of the right-wing legal organizations that refuse to organize the same way the left does when the left gets in trouble for truly violent protests. They represent everybody. They make sure they all have attorneys. Where I have been trying to get help for many of these individuals over a year now, and many firms will not take the case. Many lawyers will not take the case. They will not do this pro bono. And it's a real problem on the right and something we need to do in terms of fixing our own infrastructure on the America First right. So there's just so much to take in on this, so much to learn, so much to say. So I appreciate you having me on to share my thoughts.
And I'm very happy that you're here. And speaking of the name Matthew, unfortunately, this comes weeks after Matthew Perna, yet another January 6th political prisoner and defendant, sadly took his own life because of the pressures that the DOJ was exerting over him, trying to ruin the man's life when he's one of these other people who literally did nothing. Cops opened the door, he walked in, was there for 15 or so minutes and left, and next thing you know, they're trying to destroy his life. They took away his ability to provide for himself with a job. Every little thing that you and I take for granted, he was unable to do, because in the same way that some of these lawyers were kind of hands off, just trying to get a plumber out there, they don't want to be associated either with some of these January 6th political prisoners. It is very isolating and it is so damaging. And the last time you and I spoke, it was before the January 6th, the 1 year anniversary, I guess you could call it, and you were having candlelight vigils, across the nation. So I want to ask you, what have you been up to in these last few months since we last spoke?
Well, we're very proud that Look Ahead America has, with your support and giving us coverage, allowed us to educate the public on the problem with these political prisoners, on the political persecution of them, not for anything they've done, but for what they believed. And we spent the last year having over 70 events from New York to Hawaii to Florida and right back to Washington, D.C., raising public awareness of this. And now it's time to take action. And I know that a lot of people watching this right now, they feel completely helpless. They have no idea what they can do for these people who are sitting in prison. But Look at America is taking the lead and giving them an avenue to make a difference. And that is called the J6 question. I urge everyone here to take advantage of the television studio in their pocket, in their cell phone. Start recording and go find somebody running for federal office, House or Senate, incumbent or challenger, we don't care what party, and ask them what they're going to do about the political persecution of patriotic Americans in the aftermath of January 6th. Get that video back to us, because this is something voters, according to polling, overwhelmingly agree with us on. And we need to make sure that they are educated on where their elected officials and the candidates running for these offices that are going to be voted in November stand on these issues. So look, confront them, ask them what they're going to do. Maybe the answer is a good answer, maybe it's a bad one, maybe it's an ugly one. But send us the footage so we can publicize it and index and hold them accountable. Now is your opportunity. They're like vampires during the daytime. When elections come around, these politicians, they've got to show up at town halls, they've got to do debates, public events. Now's your chance to hold them accountable. Whip that cell phone out, ask them the question, and send it to us at lookaheadamerica.org.
Matt, you do a lot of great work, so keep up the great work, and thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me.